I'll never forget the day my life completely turned upside down. It was a regular Tuesday morning, or so I thought. I had just dropped my son off at school, feeling like everything was finally falling into place after years of hard work. But as I walked back to my car, I saw something that shattered every illusion I had about my marriage. There, in front of my house, was my husband, Mark. And he wasn't alone. He stood next to a woman someone I'd never seen before, and beside her, a little boy who looked to be about 5 years old. Mark's arm was wrapped around the woman's waist, and the boy was holding her hand, smiling at me like they were some kind of family. And as I stood frozen on the driveway, watching this scene unfold, I realized this was no coincidence. This was something Mark had planned. Hi, my name is Rachel Carter, and I live in Houston, Texas. I'm a 36-year-old mother of one, and I've been married to Mark for almost 10 years. Or at least, I thought I had been. Over the years, I'd worked hard to make sure our family had everything we needed. We were comfortable, stable at least on the outside. But looking at Mark and this strange woman, I could already feel the cracks forming beneath the surface. My stomach twisted as I tried to process what was happening. Mark saw me standing there, his expression unreadable. "Rachel, we need to talk," he said, barely glancing at me as if this was just another casual conversation. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to stay calm. My mind was racing, but the only thing I could think about was how he had the audacity to stand there with her, as if nothing had changed. Mark's eyes flicked to the woman. "This is Emily. She's someone I've been seeing." His words hit me like a slap to the face. I felt a wave of nausea rise in my chest. How long had this been going on? Was it just the two of them? Or was there more? "I'm sorry, Rachel," Mark continued, his tone flat and emotionless. "But this marriage is over. I want a divorce." And just like that, my world came crashing down. But there was something even worse coming. I didn't know it yet, but my son, Jonah, was about to change everything. As I stood there, speechless, Jonah came running out of the house. His wide eyes darted between me and Mark. And then he saw Emily. He stopped in his tracks, holding something in his hand. "Mom," Jonah said, his voice soft but firm. "You really don't know?" Before I could respond, he walked over to Mark, handed him a book, and the blood drained from my husband's face. But what was in that book? And why did Mark's expression go from smug confidence to sheer panic? The moment Jonah handed Mark that book, everything around me seemed to freeze. Mark's confident, almost smug expression faltered, and for the first time in years, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. He stared at the book Jonah had passed to him, his hands shaking ever so slightly as he held it. I couldn't understand why, but it was as if the world around us shifted in that instant. I watched Mark flip open the cover, and my curiosity burned. What could possibly be in that book that had him looking so unnerved? I glanced at Jonah, who was standing there, his face a mixture of calm resolve and something I couldn't place. I felt my heart racing, and before I knew it, I was walking towards Mark and Jonah, the overwhelming need to know what was going on driving me forward. "Mark, what's in the book?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't respond right away. He just stood there, eyes scanning the pages, his face growing paler by the second. Emily, the woman who had been standing so confidently beside him just moments ago, now looked almost as uncomfortable as I felt. She stepped back slightly, glancing nervously at Mark as if unsure whether to intervene or not. "What's going on, Mark?" I demanded again, my voice shaking with anger and confusion. "What is this? What are you hiding?" Mark finally looked up at me, his face tense and his eyes wide. "Rachel, I didn't think you'd find out like this." His voice faltered, and I could hear the panic rising in his tone. "It's not what you think." I stepped closer, my fists clenched. "Not what I think. You're standing here with some woman and her child, telling me you're getting a divorce, and now you're acting like this? You owe me an explanation, Mark." But he didn't give me one. Instead, he turned the book towards me. The title on the cover was simple, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. Our Life Together. The Secret. Journal of Mark Carter. I felt my knees go weak as I read the title. My heart dropped to my stomach. Our Life Together. It was a journal. But why did Jonah have it? And why did it seem like Mark was hiding something so crucial in it? "Jonah, What is this? I asked, my voice trembling. But before he could answer, Mark slammed the book shut and shoved it back into Jonah's hands. His face twisted with anger. Give it to me, Jonah, Mark barked. But Jonah didn't move. He stood there, his gaze steady on his father, not backing down for a second. You should have told her the truth, Dad, Jonah said softly. You've been lying to her for years. Mark's face turned red with fury. Get inside the house, Jonah, now. But Jonah stood his ground. No, Dad. I'm not going anywhere until you tell Mom the truth. She deserves to know. My heart pounded in my chest as the truth I'd been too afraid to confront began to rise to the surface. Mark wasn't just betraying me with Emily. There was something far worse hiding behind those pages. But what could it be? And why had Jonah, my sweet, innocent son, been carrying this bombshell all along? I stood there, frozen in disbelief, as Jonah and Mark faced each other. Mark's face was flushed with anger, but there was something else lurking in his eyes, guilt. Jonah held the book close to his chest, as if it was something too precious to let go of, but also something too painful to carry alone. Jonah, give me the book, Mark shouted, his voice trembling now, no longer full of the cocky confidence he'd had when he first showed up with Emily. But Jonah didn't budge. He simply looked at me with those big, serious eyes that, at that moment, held more maturity than I had ever given him credit for. Mom, he said, his voice calm but unwavering. There's something you need to know. Dad's been lying to you for a long time. This book, it's everything. It's the truth. I was shaking, my whole body trembling with anticipation. My mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle. What was in that book? What had Mark been hiding for so long? I glanced at Emily, who was now standing further back, her arms crossed, looking like she was trying to disappear into the background. She knew. She had to know. Jonah, what's in it? I whispered, almost afraid to hear the answer. Jonah stepped forward, his eyes never leaving mine. I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but it's time. Dad's been seeing Emily for a while now, but that's not the worst part. The worst part is the other woman, the one he's been seeing for even longer. Her name's Rachel, your best friend, Mom. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My best friend, Rachel? No, this couldn't be happening. My mind spiraled. I'd known Rachel for years. She was like family to me. We'd laughed, cried, shared everything. The idea of her betraying me in the worst possible way, the way Mark had, was unimaginable. But Jonah wasn't finished. There's more, Mom. Dad and Rachel, they had an affair. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. It went on for months, maybe even longer. The whole time. You had no idea. His voice wavered, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of sadness in his eyes. He didn't want to hurt me, but he knew it was the only way to make me see the truth. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, and I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. The weight of Jonah's words crashed down on me like a tidal wave. All this time, Mark had been lying, betraying me with my best friend. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Mark, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Is this true? Were you really with Rachel? Mark refused to look me in the eye. Instead, he glanced at Emily, his face a mask of shame and anger. I didn't want you to find out like this, Rachel. But yes, it's true. I've been seeing Rachel for almost a year, and I've been lying to you the whole time. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. My hands trembled, and I had to grip the railing of the porch to steady myself. How could my husband do this to me? How could he betray not only me, but my best friend too? But Jonah wasn't done yet. He held up the book again, his small hands trembling as he opened it to a page near the middle. He flipped it around so I could see the photographs taped inside. The pictures were of Mark and Rachel together, at my house, at the beach, in my car, laughing. They were living a double life, right under my nose. I gasped as I looked at the photos. How had I not noticed the signs? The late nights, the secretive conversations, the way Mark had become more distant. I thought I was just imagining things, but the truth was right in front of me, and it was worse than anything I could have ever imagined. Mark stepped forward, his eyes pleading. Rachel, please. I didn't want you to find out like this, but I couldn't keep lying to you anymore. The betrayal was too much. I felt my heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. Get out, Mark. Just leave. I can't look at you right now. But as Mark opened his mouth to say something else, Jonah's next words would shatter the last bit of my trust in him, and in everything I thought I knew. I stood there numb. I had never felt this empty in my entire life. Mark's words, his betrayal echoed in my ears, but they seemed distant now, as if they belonged to someone else's reality. I stared at the photographs in Jonah's hands, unable to take my eyes off the evidence of the lies I had lived with for months, maybe even years. Mark's face twisted with a mixture of guilt and desperation, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for him. I had spent so many years giving him everything: my trust, my love, my loyalty, and in return, he had shattered it all in one fell swoop. "Rachel," he said again, his voice quiet but pleading. "I never meant for it to get this far. I was just trying to find something I was missing, but I didn't want to hurt you. I swear. Please." I shook my head, my hands trembling at my sides. "I can't do this anymore, Mark. I can't believe a word that comes out of your mouth." My voice broke as I said it, the pain of the truth sinking deeper into my chest. I looked at Jonah, who stood quietly, the book still in his hands, but his expression now soft. He was just a child, but the maturity in his eyes was beyond his years. He had witnessed everything: his father's lies, his mother's heartbreak, and yet he was the one who had stood up. He was the one who had brought everything crashing down, and I couldn't be prouder of him in that moment. "Jonah, thank you," I whispered. "I know this wasn't easy for you. I'm so proud of you." Jonah nodded but didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He had already said enough. Mark took a step toward me, but I held up my hand. "Don't come any closer," I said, my voice firm despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. "This is over. You need to leave. Take your things and go." Mark's face twisted in frustration. "Rachel, please. I love you, okay? I made a mistake. I was confused. I'm sorry." But before he could finish, Jonah's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Dad, stop. Stop lying to her. You don't love her. You've been lying to both of us for so long. It's too late for I'm sorry." Jonah's words were raw, cutting through the tension like a scream in the silence. Mark turned to Jonah, his eyes narrowing. "You don't know anything, Jonah. You don't understand what this is like." "No, Dad," Jonah interrupted, his voice hardening. "You're the one who doesn't understand. This isn't just about you and Emily or you and Rachel. This is about me and Mom. It's about trust. And you broke it." I watched as Mark opened his mouth to say something more, but then he closed it, his expression faltering as the weight of Jonah's words sank in. He seemed to shrink in front of me, his arrogance crumbling. Emily, who had been standing in the background, shifted uncomfortably on her feet. She hadn't spoken once since she arrived, but I could see the conflict on her face. She knew she was a part of the destruction of my family, but she also knew she wasn't the one who had caused it. That was Mark's doing. "Look, Rachel," Emily said, stepping forward hesitantly. "I never wanted to hurt you. Mark told me he was going to divorce you, but I didn't know it was going to happen like this. I couldn't help it." I laughed, bitter and harsh. "You didn't know? You didn't know?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You've been with my husband. You've been part of this whole mess, and you didn't know how it would end." She flinched, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. Emily had known what she was doing, even if she hadn't fully grasped the depth of the betrayal. But Mark, he was the one who had built this house of lies, and it was about to collapse on him. I turned to Mark once more. "Leave. I want you gone. I don't want to see you again. Take whatever you need and get out of our lives." Mark opened his mouth to argue, but the weight of everything Jonah had said, everything he had done, seemed to fall on him like a ton of bricks. His shoulders slumped, and without another word, he turned and walked toward the door. I heard the soft slam of the front door behind him, and suddenly, the house felt quieter, emptier. But then something unexpected happened. Jonah, who had been so strong just moments before, walked over to me, his small frame shaking. He wrapped his arms around me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself cry. "Mom," Jonah whispered, "I'm so sorry you had to go through all of this, but I couldn't let you stay in the dark anymore. You deserve the truth." And in that moment, as I held my son tightly, I realized something. The truth had hurt more than I could have ever imagined, but it had set me free. Mark had left, but the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. It was going to be painful, messy, and full of challenges, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control again, and I was ready to take back my life. But one question still haunted me. What was next for Mark, Emily, and Rachel, and how would they handle the consequences of their actions? It's funny how quickly the world can turn upside down. One day, you're living in what you think is a perfect marriage, and the next, you're standing alone in your own home, your heart shattered, and your entire life rewritten in an instant. But life, as it turns out, has a funny way of making sure the truth comes to light. And sometimes, when you least expect it, it gives you the chance to turn the tables. After Mark left, I thought I'd never feel whole again. The devastation he caused wasn't something you could just sweep under the rug. The memories of betrayal lingered like a dark cloud. But there was something else too. Something empowering. Something I didn't expect to feel after everything he had done. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding. My son Jonah and I spent more time together than we had in years. We laughed, we cried, and we healed, but I also made sure that Mark didn't walk away without facing the full consequences of his actions. It wasn't enough for me to just let him go. He needed to understand what it felt like to be on the other side of a betrayal, to feel the sting of being discarded like I had. And that's when the plan began to form in my mind. First, I went to the bank. Mark had always handled the finances in our marriage, and I had trusted him completely. But when I took a closer look at our accounts, I saw something that made my blood boil. Mark had been siphoning off money into a separate account, one that I hadn't known about. And to make matters worse, Emily was listed as a co-signer. With the help of my lawyer, I made sure to drain that account and transfer everything back into my name. The house, the car, the savings. It was all mine. And once that was done, I made sure Mark had no access to it. I sent him a legal notice, demanding that he pay his share of the divorce settlement plus interest for all the money he had stolen from me over the years. But I didn't stop there. I called Rachel, the friend I thought I could trust more than anyone, and I told her everything. The affair, the lies, everything. I didn't care that she had already lost Mark. I didn't care that she was probably just as hurt as I was. What I cared about was making sure she understood that her actions had consequences. I sent her pictures of the journal Jonah had found, pictures of her and Mark together, proof of their betrayal, and I made sure she saw the devastation she had caused. But the best part, I knew it wasn't just about revenge. It was about me taking back my life. I enrolled in a yoga class to heal my mind and body, started volunteering at a women's shelter, and finally signed up for the business course I had always wanted to take. I had dreams too. I had a future, and I wasn't going to let Mark, Emily, or Rachel take that from me. The final blow came when I made sure Mark's company found out about his affair. I wasn't the only one he had lied to, and it wasn't long before I got wind of the fact that Mark was no longer welcome at his job. His reputation was in tatters, and I made sure everyone knew why. He had betrayed not just his family, but his career, his reputation, and everything else he had worked for. As I sat there, looking out at the life I had rebuilt, I realized something. Revenge doesn't always look like a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes, it's the quiet satisfaction of seeing the people who hurt you suffer the consequences of their own actions. And as for Jonah, he had become stronger than I ever imagined. He stood by me through every decision, every choice, and I made sure to let him know how proud I was of him. He'd shown me the strength to face the truth and to rise above it. But the question still lingers. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you take the higher road? Or would you make sure they felt the weight of their betrayal? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do? Would you let the past go? Or would you make sure they paid for what they did? I'd love to hear your stories.